Great job, as always.
Go forward.
Thank you very much. Oh, great, thanks. Well, excellent start there by Maribel, and I'm thrilled to be here. Just a couple quick fun facts. I was talking to Paul earlier. I came to one of the first events that these guys put together. This was 6 or 7 years ago. And I'm so excited that they invited me back to be here again this time around. And I love having these types of discussions in conjunction with Maribel as well. And we've done a few of these in other environments because I really love this idea of transforming your business, of enterprise transformation, and even very succinctly and simply, as Maribel put it, it's the concept of the fact that small changes can have a major impact, a major positive impact is what we're obviously hoping for in your business. So we hope that you have the opportunity to take away some tidbits of information from the discussions that are going to happen, and then equally as important, the discussions you'll have with each other while you're here as part of the exchange. So very excited to be here. A little bit about me. I run mobile product marketing for our enterprise teams at Samsung in the US. So I have responsibility for all of our mobility products, which is everything from smartphones to wearables to tablets to Windows 2-in-1 devices to some exciting things that are going on in augmented reality and virtual reality spaces, and really responsible for looking after how we kind of pull all that together. And the most interesting way that we do that is in this type of environment. It's getting feedback from you, our customers and our partners to figure out, what's the best way to really approach this. And we think there's a couple of things going on here, and I call this sort of digital transformation and the IT paradox. And the reason why I call it the IT paradox is because there's a bit of a balancing act that's going on. Okay? When you look at the picture of the iceberg on the screen, all you see is that very little bit of the iceberg at the top, and you might think, wow, that's not that big of a deal. That's not this major impending doom action that's coming towards my boat, as an example, or that I'm motoring towards, but there's this massive element of that iceberg that exists below the water. So part of what we talk about when we look at how to talk about transforming the business is how to transform the way we think about the business. And there's a couple of ways to look at this. You can look at it from the sense of thinking, okay, we're living in this age of what we would call the perfect storm. So it's ubiquitous connectivity, it's the millennials that are coming into the workplace, it's what do I do with all the baby boomers who aren't maybe using the same technologies, and then it's all of these, I'll call them technology collisions that are coming together. It's that ecosystem that Maribel was talking about the different types of technologies that we see in business, and then how do we leverage those technologies, how do we deal with those technologies, how do we apply those to the different types of users, either in our own companies or in the customers that we're selling to. And you know what? Millennials are a big part of this now, right? So how many people are currently actively hiring millennials in your business? Should be everybody, right? Okay, so it's almost the entire room. And the reason why is because this is the new generation. These are the folks that are coming out of school. These are the folks that grew up on mobile technology. They didn't grow up with a hardwired PC on the desk. Maybe they're still using laptops, but probably more often than not, they're using tablets and smartphones for almost everything they do. They're getting into wearables. They're looking at ways that machine learning and augmented reality can improve their lives. Okay, so we have to look at the type of person that we're working with and dealing with as much as the technology. Okay. So keep that in mind as we talk through this idea of the strategic balance. So I like to show sort of the seesaw here that talks about what this balance really is. And on one side of this equation, you have all of the IT organization. And at Samsung, our sales team is selling to the IT organization in many cases, and we're talking to people who are concerned about security. For how many people in the room, by show of hands, is your top concern around mobility security? How many people say security still? Okay, so that's a good sized group. How many people say productivity is your top concern with mobility? slightly smaller group. How many people are really concerned about the user experience? Okay, so that's a good response, right? So that's interesting. There's a bigger number of hands that went up for user experience than productivity, and I think that's pretty telling. There's this influence that we talked about with millennials in the business, and they're all about the user experience, all about what can I do with this? How does it improve or enrich my life? How does it improve my ability to work? Okay, so they're on one side, the users are on one side of this equation, and then you've got the IT organization on the other side. That those are important concerns as well. Security and productivity. Okay? Driving down cost is an important concern. And then the end users is improving their productivity, improving their lives, improving their user experience. So that's the balancing act here. Again, one side, I've got the decision makers. On one side, I've got the users. And how do you work to balance that equation? Because a lot of times it's the IT organization that's in the middle here. It's the team that has to make the decisions about, well, we really need our EMM move to the cloud, or we really need additional layers of cloud security, or we need additional layers of security on the device. But how do I do that by still balancing that need of just the security and the productivity and driving down costs, but still delight my end users who are millennials, and they'll probably go work somewhere else unless I do that? This is really where these collisions, these technology collisions come into play. And it's not a collision in the sense of this sort of cataclysmic issue or scene that you see on the screen here. We're not talking about planets colliding. We're talking about different technologies colliding and coming together. We're talking about the ability now to access maybe an entire workflow application on a wearable device. Okay? Maybe I've got my smartphone back at the desk. Maybe it's in my pocket. Maybe I need instant access to information. Maybe I'm just going through a setup process for a retail environment. I can do a lot of these things in smaller formats today. Okay? I can use wearables. I can use tablets. I can use smartphones. All these decision points that you have within your business are now colliding together. And of course, security is an important element of that, because now you have multiple data points. Maribel talked about data. Data is critical. Each of these devices that you or users in your organizations or your customers and clients are leveraging have access to information. So it's not just about protecting the device itself. As Maribel pointed out, it's about protecting the ecosystem. It's about securing not just the physical, but the data that goes along with that as well. Okay. And again, now I've got two sides to the coin. I've got maybe the decision makers in the organization are saying, we've got to lock all of this down. We've got to make sure that all of this data is secure. And then I have on the flip side of that, I have the end user who's saying, I really want to have access to both Facebook and LinkedIn or Twitter and all of these other fun social media applications, but at the same time have access to my corporate email. That's on the user side. Okay, same safe, same security story that we're talking about here. So you have to look at it from two different perspectives and how you can balance that within the organization with mobility. Okay, of course, from a Samsung perspective, we do that with something called Knox, which is built into the actual hardware of the device itself, but then gives you the ability, even from a cloud EMM solution capability, to manage that data. But there's lots of different management options out there. There's lots of ways to control and manage information on the device or to enforce IT policies. And so really, at the end of the day, it's a function of what steps do you take. Are you taking that leap? Are you really providing the right level of security, but balancing that with the end user experience? Again, balance between the C-suite and then the end user. And remember, on the end user side here, what they're looking for is to drive up their productivity, to improve their experience in the workplace. You can still do that. You can still balance this equation from a security perspective. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Okay? You have options to tackle both sides of that. Passwords are really interesting. How many people have walked up to somebody that you work with and have seen where they've actually written down a password somewhere at their desk? How many people? A lot of people, right? Okay. This still happens. I'm amazed by the number of customers that I meet with, and I walk up to their office or their desk, and they've got the little yellow sticky note, and they've got their password written on there. Like, okay, so how secure really is that at that point? Now I've got access, if I wanted to, I have access to all of their information. Passwords are interesting, right? They're not just about work as well. I recently had my password for my LinkedIn account actually hacked. And someone had gotten access to that, and then they posted some information or it was a direct message from LinkedIn that looked like it came from me, and I had no idea this was going on until someone texted me and said, "Hey, did you really send this? Or is this something kind of like you're trying to promote?" It was somebody trying to promote a business product that I have absolutely nothing to do with. But it was a fascinating experience because it made me think, how important are passwords? Okay? And then how can we take passwords to the next level when we're talking about, again, that need to balance that requirement on the one hand for security and on the other hand for the user experience. Okay. And a really interesting technology development that allows us to do that today is this influx of biometrics. Okay. Biometrics are really now allowing you to be your password. Okay. That could be your fingerprint, that could be an iris scan, that could be facial recognition. There's all kinds of different ways you can leverage biometrics, but this is an effort to say now, okay, I'm improving the user experience because I don't have to remember all these passwords, or worse yet, I don't even have to write them down. Okay? But now I'm creating something that still has a security level and the ability to control the access to information on a physical device, and then control the access to data on that device as well. Okay, so biometrics are a really nice way to help balance that equation. Okay. And then I asked about productivity, and again, I think more people raise their hands for user experience than productivity, and that's okay, because we really think they kind of go hand in hand together. So if I'm improving the user experience, I'm really improving the productivity for my workforce as well. Okay. And in today's age, there's just all kinds of distractions out there. There are all kinds of members of the workforce who are still walking around with multiple different types of devices. I have to juggle all of that, and then making sure I have access to coffee or sodas or whatever else I need at work. Productivity has become something that's really it's being commoditized, right? There's only so many hours in the day. So how do we improve our usage of that time? How do we, again, balance that equation between the decision makers in the organization who say, I want all of this data to be secure, maybe I'll let you leverage biometrics now in order to drive that need to protect the passwords, and then the end user who says, you know what, I really want to do both my work and my personal on one device. I want to get down to maybe even where now these powerful devices that we carry in our pockets that we call smartphones really are in fact really smart, because they can really be used as an end computing device. Okay? We've really, interestingly enough, passed the time where processing speeds on laptops or even on tablets are better than what they are on smartphones. Seeing the same processing speeds in those smartphone devices today that we saw in desktop computers many, many years ago when I was in college and doing term papers and things along those lines. Okay? So this technology is driving that change, and it's driving the change towards the benefit of the user, but not to the detriment of the security requirements of the C-suite and the business. Something really interesting that we think will continue to be a unique trend in the business is this concept of the desktop experience, this concept of the smartphone really driving the mobile computing end-user mobile computing experience. So now with something like DEX, this desktop experience, I can plug into a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse, and my smartphone does everything, literally everything that I would do on a PC or on a laptop or on a tablet. Okay? And then when it's time to get up and go for a meeting, or if I'm leaving the office, all I have to do is grab that device and go. It's still connected to whatever mobile device management platform you're using. It's still providing the same level of security on that device. Nothing's changed. We're just improving, again, productivity, improving the user experiencing, balancing that equation between the needs for security and data management and the needs for the end user for productivity and freedom. It doesn't change the fact, though, that you need to continue to look at risk mitigation. And Mirabel did a really nice job of talking about the ecosystem and the requirement around solutions. And I look at the business really the same way. There's only so much you can do from a hardware perspective. You need to have an ecosystem of partners, and you need to select the types of solutions that are beneficial to your business that work on those different types of devices that are solving a specific challenge for you. So at the end of the day, it's really about solving a challenge, about reducing cost, improving productivity, driving all of those things that are important to your business and having a positive impact. And that end-to-end supply chain is an integral part of that as well. And that's where partners are absolutely critical to this ecosystem. So I know we're going to have other discussions at the session around partnerships and different ecosystems and networks that you can leverage. But keep that in mind as you're thinking about your mobility strategy, the importance of the partner ecosystem and how you can leverage that in order to help solve problems in your business. Again, balance between the C-suite and the users. Users have a different concept of solutions than the decision makers in the business do. To them, a solution might be Facebook or a social media communication tool. For the decision maker in the business, it might be a workflow application or Salesforce or back-end support and solutions from IBM or SAP or any of the other big providers. Okay? All of these solutions are optimized to run in mobile environments now. So if you're not taking advantage of solutions in the mobile environment today, you really need to look at that as part of your transformation strategy. Okay. And it does really come down to the partner ecosystem. Particularly when we look at emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning and augmented reality and expansions around virtual reality. This is really where the partner ecosystem becomes absolutely critical. And it doesn't have to be large-scale partners, although so many of them are doing great things. Mirabel talked about this ecosystem that Salesforce created as an example, and there are large partners in that ecosystem, there are small partners in that ecosystem. But they've centered around a kind of a common goal and a common objective of exposing those solutions and capabilities to a larger audience. And that's one of the things we've been looking at doing at Samsung as well, is how do we expose those solutions and capabilities to a larger audience and provide more choice, provide more capabilities, provide more ability to solve problems in your business. And I mentioned the end-to-end supply chain, and there is a requirement here around this being a solid supply chain, right? So if something goes wrong in that ecosystem that we're talking about from a mobility perspective, it starts to break down, okay? Something could go wrong on the solution side, something could go wrong on the hardware side, something could go wrong on the support side. That's why you need all of those elements working together in order to make sure you've built out the right level of mobility strategy and transformation for your business. So I showed that slide about the storm and then showed the planets colliding and the collisions for a reason, because we think there really is an opportunity to harness the power that's going on here, the power of all of these collisions, the power of the millennials in the workplace, and the experience that they're really driving at the end of the day. Millennials, by the way, are having a huge impact on the way that we look at our business from a Samsung perspective. We're literally changing the way that we go to market because of that type of feedback, because of the type of feedback we get from all of you, from all of our customers. It's really the most interesting part of working for a technology company, is understanding how people use that technology and what it means to them. So looking forward to spending some time with you all here and really understanding again how you're transforming your businesses with mobility and what we can do to help you with that type of discussion. And to continue that discussion, I'll invite Maribel back on stage, and we'll chat through some other items here.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Maribel.
Have a seat.
Oh, give it back to you.
And now we're going to put Eric on the hot seat.
Yes.
So while I see you all the time, every time I see you, we're always talking about something that's slightly different, and the market has obviously evolved around us since the last time we'd seen each other. So having said that, one of the things I think people think about with Samsung, and I've recently been to the Samsung Developer Conference and seen some of the things that are going on there, but is Samsung just a phone company? How do we think about Samsung? Is Samsung trying to be a strategic provider, and what would that even mean?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And there's some fun facts that float around there. And Samsung as an organization sells more than 1 million smartphones per day. And you might think, okay, well, that's enough to keep anybody excited about your business, particularly
Not
if you're
saying being
in
a phone vendor bad when you sell that many,
hardware
but,
business,
yeah.
right? Yeah. But what's more exciting for us is really looking at the emerging technologies, looking at how wearables play into this ecosystem, looking at how even you could connect multiple different types of devices together. And what's really fascinating is this didn't start with just mobile phones. In fact, the concept of connecting devices together, at least from a Samsung perspective, came from televisions. Came from the fact that we've got a great market of TV customers out there. How do we let them use the TV in a more effective way at home? So that really started the process of, okay, how do I connect the smartphone to the TV? How do I connect the tablet to the TV? And then the discussion expanded from there. Well, if I can connect all those things, why can't I connect a wearable? Why can't I connect the tablet and the wearable and the smartphone and the TV and the washer and dryer and the refrigerator and the smart range and all of those other things together, which has really been driving sort of the smart home discussion. And you can look at it the same way in your business. There's an opportunity to connect all of these different devices in the ecosystem together, and just a number of different solutions providers out there that can help do that for you.
Okay. So you mentioned biometrics, and biometrics sort of easing this tension around passwords and user and C-suite. I'm seeing a lot of the C-suite and IT leaders get hung up on well, on one hand, I've got this AD thing going on, and on the other hand, I could have this biometrics thing going on. When you think about it and when you're talking to customers, what do you tell them to do to get started?
Yeah.
How do you think about embedding biometrics in the organization in a world where we're just used to using our email address and whatever Active Directory password is?
Biometrics are interesting, right? It's an interesting question, and there's different jumping off points, I think, for different types of customers. So there's levels of technology risk that some customers are willing to take. So you're either risk adverse or not. And what we've seen from customers who have been early adopters in the biometric space is that it's really working out well for them. And fingerprint, I think, is what really has started this, right? I mean, so there's some fascination around iris scanning and facial recognition. But at the end of the day, when we see biometrics working in the enterprise, it's really still around the fingerprint capability, because it's been around longer, it's a more proven from a security capability, and it's a relatively easy thing to do, whether you're touching the front of the device or the back of the device, versus necessarily having to enter multiple different passwords. So the design is to really talk about how it makes your life easier, but not less secure. So it's a combination of the ease of use, but still having that security focus.
Okay. One of the things I mentioned in my presentation was cloud computing, and I know that Samsung has made some interesting changes in cloud computing. You want to talk a little bit about how cloud fits into Samsung and how you're using it to further your journey as an organization?
I would love to. Cloud is fascinating, right? And I think if you had asked me or other people who work for Samsung even 5 years ago whether we ever thought we would be in the cloud business, a lot of people would say no. But I would say, looking back on it, we already were in the cloud business. Because one of the primary elements of the cloud, as we all like to call it in the industry, is it's just this access to all of this data that's out there. What do I do with that? How do I manage it? How do I secure that data? how many devices am I pulling down that data from? Where is it stored? Is it really truly in the cloud? Where are these server farms that are driving the cloud experience? So it's created all these fun questions, but more importantly, I think created a really healthy discussion around the benefits that cloud computing bring to the table. The ability for collaboration, the ability for sharing of information. And then, Maribel, one of the points you made that's probably one of the most important ones is now getting access to analytics that are really helpful about my business. And what do I do with that information in order to improve my business? And knowing that the access to that analytics and that data is still secure is a really important element of that discussion.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting when I went to the Software Developer Conference is that you announced something around basically one IoT cloud. And I thought that we were talking earlier about this concept of breaking down your own internal data silos. Samsung's a big organization. The fact that you could get all the organizations to agree that you were going to have one IoT cloud, I thought was a really interesting lesson that we can all take away in our business. So that's very exciting. So we talked a little bit about this concept of user experience. You have been basically putting out new voice interfaces with Bixby. You've been looking at basically new VR technology for organizations. Any lessons learned or tips or advice having tried to push the envelope on some of these emerging technologies of what folks in the room should think about?
Well, emerging technologies are fascinating, right? I mean, so you can have a sort of a walk or crawl strategy where you look to a lot of the leaders in the business who have been doing some of these things longer, or you can have a run strategy that really says, let's get out in front of this. And Samsung's kind of fallen somewhere in between, right? So one thing that we've started to do that we were historically not very good at was look at some companies that we can partner with, or in fact even some companies that we can acquire. And there were some very interesting acquisitions that are driving this whole machine learning concept and the development of augmented reality technologies, voice assistants, those types of things. And two of them that are kind of important. One is Viv, which brought us a number of different elements from a voice identification, from a voice recognition, from a voice intelligent agent type of capability, which by the way was after we started building out Bixby. So Bixby's going to continue to get better. We're excited about that. And then another one that a lot of people looked at originally saying, okay, this is great for say connected car, but the Harman acquisition, there's a massive amount of technology and software understanding and ecosystem understanding and cloud understanding behind what the fine folks at Harman are doing. So two interesting areas to continue to follow what's going on from a voice perspective, what that means on the security side, how do you continue to secure, say, requests that you're making from like a Google Home or Alexa type of device, how is that different or the same as to when you're talking to your smartphone, and then how do we look at artificial intelligence as a category going forward. I think it's just going to be absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting from the vendor side, I've noticed that a lot of vendors are actually acquiring talent, right? And the reason that this is important is there's some discussion about how many thousands of data scientist type people there actually are and how they all seem to be getting sucked into vendors. But the good news around that is hopefully that there will be services from said vendors that can help you kickstart some of your own machine learning efforts. So that's one of the things that we've been looking at a lot. But I wanted to see if there were any questions in the audience for Eric before I let him off the hot seat. Anybody have a question? No? Okay. I thought I saw a hand. There's one in the back.
Yep.
So ecosystems are always a challenge. How do you rationalize the relationship with Google?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Okay, so the question was ecosystems are always a challenge. How do you rationalize your partnership with Google?
Yeah.
Co-opetition, whatever you want to call that.
That's a great question. So we've often looked at ourselves as really good partners with Google and with really understanding the Android operating system and how we can effectively be the best we can possibly be with that operating system and provide the best experience for our customers. And there's a lot of partnerships that have gone on around security, continued partnerships that you'll hear about as we move into 2018 around security and what we're doing in that space. So we absolutely see Google as an ecosystem partner. Yes, we know that you've got a hardware platform that they're positioning as well, but we see it as there's plenty of room for healthy competition or co-opetition, partnerships and co-opetition in the market, and Google will continue to be one of those players that we'll work very closely with. But we do see an opportunity with other large ISVs, with other collaboration partners, with other infrastructure and back-end system partners that we can really start to drive a nice integrated story around. So it certainly won't continue just to be a Google story. There will be a lot of other partners that are part of that also.
So with that, we're out of time, and I believe it's time to go to a break. Phil, would you like to introduce the break? Thanks to Eric. Eric?
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.